Hey, we're Saints. Welcome to our crucifixional live stream. We are going to jump right into the topic of AI. As you probably are aware, unless you've been off the grid for an extended period of time, artificial intelligence is the new thing. It is taking over the world. It is a powerful, powerful tool that can accomplish a lot of tasks very, very quickly. It does, however, also produce fear. Lots of people have been bought into the fearful ideas, that someday the machine will become all powerful, i.e. the Matrix, and take over the world, and we'll be slaves stuffed in little pods to be, batteries. And of course, that kind of stuff is out there. But we're going to explore some of the less fantastic fears and concerns that come with artificial intelligence. We've even seen, I know we talked about it in a previous episode, there are robots. There are cars that now drive us on their own. Uber, in my opinion, is one of the strongest companies, and I think they're on the brink because car services like Waymo will take them out. Tesla is also working on automated cars or driverless cars. And so, we won't need to be taking Uber anymore. This presents another fear and concern that people have. What about stealing my job? Many college students are frustrated because they're taking my jobs. Spent all this money on my degree, can't get a job. We even saw a few months ago in a episode that we aired, there are now robotics that can carry and deliver, listen to the words, carry and deliver a human child. So the artificial nature of the womb is now something that is out there. And all of this is causing consternation because what do we do with it? So let me, before we get into it, with that, this stage being set, Deacon Greg and I are certainly not experts on artificial intelligence. I don't know that we're here to present anything authoritative. Instead, I think you and I are going to just have a conversation. We kind of know where we're going, but we kind of don't, because we want to explore the topic, the ideas of artificial intelligence, and maybe we'll come up with some kind of answer, but definitely not definitive. But it's just an opener for the exploration, the understanding of artificial intelligence and how we as moderns use it. And then in our next episode, we will talk further about artificial intelligence and education, particularly the education of our kids. So, rant over. All of that to say, welcome. Good to see you, buddy.
Hello.
Tell me, do you use AI at all? What have you used it for?
I used AI once.
Really?
Only once.
What'd you do with it?
So I wanted to see about taking a lecture that I had given and seeing if it could be turned into an article. And so I used AI to produce a transcript of that lecture that I had given that was videoed. And then I used an AI agent that is based in England, I believe, that says that they are designed for writers to help them edit things, and it's only to be used for editing. It gives you grammar suggestions and all of that kind of stuff, but they don't sell your data. That's their banner. They say they don't sell anything. Your stuff does not go into like this open ether where anyone can access it and all of that. Because that's my big concern with using it for writing. So I used it. It was interesting the things that it found, interesting the things that it wanted to correct that I maybe didn't want it to correct.
Right.
Because there were things that I said in a way that I said them on purpose, and it then wanted to change what I was saying.
Right.
And it changed, in my opinion, the general overall feel of things.
Yeah. I can understand that entirely. I do use it, but I have a few parameters, and you've heard me say this, Dean Greg. I will never let it write for me. Now, what I mean by that is I use AI for output, but not creativity. Because in some sense, my theory on it is, if I'm going to say, hey, AI, write this chapter or write this book or write this sermon or write this lecture, what do the people even need me for?
Yeah.
I mean, they could just go to AI and type it in and, hey, what would Father Chris say about X, Y, or Z? So, and this is an important thing that I'm starting to lean towards the human trust factor, but I'll come to what I think about that. So I don't let it write for me, but I do like the power of speed.
Yes.
And I do like some of the mundane tasks that it can take off the plate. So some of the things I do, and I'll say this, I started with ChatGPT as everyone did, but as you know, they are pretty open, right? I mean, they're open AI, right? I mean, I'm now more of a Claude guy. I really do like Claude and the co-work function. Claude is anthropic. I think that's who they are. And supposedly they keep your data much more, sealed. It's not necessarily thrown out there to the interwebs, which I think that's what they say. That being said, like some of the things I do with it every day, I wake up and I said, Claude, I want a morning report. Go to my email inboxes and see what's unopened. Give me a quick recap and then tell me what my calendar looks like today. So, those are things where I don't have to do all those clicks. It just, if I see something in the report that it gives me, okay. So that's one nice feature. Another thing that I have used it for, again, it's not producing output, but it's helping me draw connections. So as you know, I've begun writing again, and I wrote a detailed outline, how I want the book to come out, what I want it to say, but it just didn't feel great. So, and I had some, it was a funny outline in the sense that I had notes in there too, to myself. And so I put it in. I'm like, all right, Claude, clean this thing up.
Yeah.
And it drew wonderful connections for me. It didn't draw new connections. They were mine, but it was clever in that it cleaned it up and it made it more, it had good transition, which is where I was struggling. So all of that kind of stuff to say, I find it to be an extremely powerful tool if used properly.
Well, I think that's the big key, is that if used properly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting in content that is going to be used for a book that you have not yet produced.
Right.
So my fears with it is, once I put something that I have not yet put out there to the world into a program like that, does that mean now all of a sudden it is out there for the world before I even wanted it?
Right.
And what happens? How does that work with my copyright, with my thoughts, with my intellectual property?
Right.
And where is it going to go from there? I want to keep all the intellectual property I have, because I don't have much. And I want to make sure I maintain what I still have as mine, because it's mine.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, G, because I bet there will someday be some legislation about that. Because like you said, if you write it and someone steals it through AI, can you go back and say, look, check the timestamp. I wrote it on January 1st. You published it on January 2nd. It's mine. I wonder.
And schools need to start coming up with AI policies versus the plagiarism policies. Right now, AI is kind of, I think for most places, falling weirdly underneath the plagiarism categories in their policies. But is it plagiarism? Is it not? How do you actually rationalize that? I mean, we could talk more about that in the next episode when we talk about education and all of that.
Yeah.
And figuring out where that's going to go. That's a sidebar. But you got to have legislation. You have to have policies. You have to understand, and you have to be clear about what is okay, what is not okay to be able to use it. We have to cite sources that we quote from other places.
Right.
If we don't even know it's coming from another place because we're using AI, how are we going to properly cite a source?
Yeah.
And are we really sure that AI is properly citing the sources?
Right.
If they summarize a quote, for example, if I summarize a quote, I have to put a footnote and I have to put where I summarized that quote from, because the ideas are someone else's.
Right.
If AI pulls the ideas from someone else because it's just out there on a website and they don't cite that website, I'm going to get hit for the plagiarism, not ChatGPT.
And is it even right?
Right.
Because I've had to, come up with a couple of things where I checked the sources and I'm like, I even said to it once, I said, this citation, this article that you sent me to is not the correct one. And it wrote back, good catch. I'm like, what?
Why do I have to catch?
Right. So, I think that's the point, is that if you put your name on something, it is your responsibility to make sure that you have verified all of it. So I have not yet used AI to type in, the MLA or the Chicago style citations. But when I do, I will verify every single one of them, simply because, like you say, it's my name. And I think this topic about writing, I think one of the first things we should explore is letting it write for us, because there's this great movement, thrust, fear, concern, whatever, about is AI does it have a dehumanization agenda?
Yeah.
So those are the words that our Aaron used, which she found. And is it unhumanizing us, dehumanizing us? And I think particularly, let's start with writing, or at least at this point, continue with writing. It is definitely being used to write things. Kids are doing it in school. Now they've created AI. What do you call those things? You have
AI checkers.
Yes, to make sure, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how that works. I'm sure it can.
It uses AI to recognize itself.
Well, that's something.
Yeah.
That's interesting because, it's, that's crazy. That's crazy. There's a pushback against it too about, AI writing. As you and I offer, the Warrior Saints Academy will now accept students for a Master of Arts, and we're going to have a heavy emphasis on biblical leadership. We're going to have to read papers.
Yeah.
For our students. And I don't want AI. It's not because I even care, like they have to earn the grade. They do have to earn the grade. But if this person is interested in, becoming a true leader, a crucifixional leader and writing something, I want to know their thoughts because those are what's beautiful. Those are what are beautiful. And I don't, like I said earlier, I could go to AI and type it in myself, the prompt, right? What do you think?
Yep.
And I think there is people are rebelling against AI writing for them and the mistakes. We can talk about some of these things too. There was I'm going to read some things to you real quick. My publisher sent an email to her list, and so she made these comments in her email. It's kind of like a blog post, but she said that every day millions of articles, videos, emails, captions, summaries, and opinions flood our feeds. Content has become cheap because information is everywhere. And then she went on to say, her quote was, people are fighting back. And, they're fighting back because we notice the synthetic nature of it.
Yeah.
And it feels funny. It doesn't feel human. Listen to what she said, though. College students booed a commencement speaker for praising AI. I think can we show that clip?
Time magazine selected its Person of the Year for 2025. And this time, it was the architects of artificial intelligence. Interesting. There is a fear. There is a fear in your generation that the future has already been written.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution. Oh. Whoa. What happened? Okay, I struck a chord.
AI is rewriting production as we sit here. I know it. Deal with it. Like I said, it's a tool. Hey, like I said, you can hear me now or you can pay me later.
So, you can see it, booing. Further, she quoted, and again, I don't know where, I can't cite where she got the information, but there were, at the time of writing of her email, 360,000 people have started to join anti-AI Facebook groups. So, that's a thing that's out there. The other thing that was interesting, it happened here. That college thing, you remember, you saw that?
Yeah, there were college students that were graduating, and AI skipped a whole bunch of names.
We're using a new AI system as our reader. Yep. Yep. So that is a lesson learned for us.
Inez.
Derek Martinez. Eliza Layla.
So I'm going to have to disappoint many of you. We will not be able to walk the stage a second time in order to have the name on the screen.
Could you imagine being at your college graduation and your name's not being read? You've worked hard, hopefully haven't used AI to get through it, and then they skip your names. I think it was at Glendale Community College
Yeah.
where it happened. Which is down the street. It's
Yeah.
right here. But it's mind-boggling to me. How does it skip names?
Yeah.
What is it using? What are you putting into this thing?
Right.
And they actually had a storyline on I don't know if you watched the show The Pit,
No.
where it's an ER, it's a trauma center, and one of the doctors is pushing using AI for note writing. And there's a ton of pushback within the storyline of the show for this AI program. She's saying it's going to help you. They're saying, well, I want to be the one actually charting. Like, it doesn't actually, what the doctors came
Right.
to, it wasn't actually helping them with their charting, because they then have to learn a new system of how to chart so that they can use AI to help them. And it was just slowing everything down. They were staying for hours afterwards and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think, I mean, the first challenge that really we're seeing, that's a real challenge. I'm not talking about Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, although, I mean, who knows? But the real challenge that we are facing is that people now, they don't trust AI all the time. And I don't either. Like I said, I check my sources.
Right.
And so my publisher, in the end of her article, which I highlighted, she said, if people don't trust AI, who do they trust? And her response was, people trust people. And so as a publisher, she then went on, the rest of her post was simply to say, all right, authors, because she's, talking to nonfiction authors, your voice becomes more important than ever, because it gives, the way she said it was that AI, these are her words, it was great. AI gives sameness. People give creativity, and people give, and writing in your own voice gives credibility. Because, and the way she said, I loved it, because it's kind of how I write, which is why I use her as my publisher. But, hey, I'm telling you a story that I've already gone through. I have experience in this. I have failed in it. I have stumbled and fallen down and gotten back up repeatedly, and so I can become, in some sense, authoritative on the subject, as opposed to just going out into the internet ether and collecting, nice quotes and language and plopping it in.
Well, and sameness, that word struck me when you just read that.
Yeah.
Because it means conformity. If you're pulling everything from the internet, then everything out there is going to look the same, because you're pulling it from all the same sources.
Right.
And it's just going to all be this whitewashed, same. It's going to be like an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical. And it just is going to
That was low.
it's just going to keep going and going. And like, that's boring. Then you lose the ability to think. You lose the ability to have new thoughts. You lose the ability to see what someone else thinks. Like, if I'm going to read your book, I want to know what you think,
Right,
and what your struggles have been and how you've overcome them. If it's going to sound the same as this other book, like, I read 3 Dan Brown novels. By the third one, I knew on chapter 2 who the killer was,
right,
because they were all the same exact pattern, the same exact formula, and it was obvious.
Yeah.
But they sell.
Yeah. Well, and that's a sad, a sad statement on us as consumers, what we're willing to consume. But that's another conversation, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the other part of it, I think, is in writing. And again, I'm still stuck on the writing thing, is that it's not just that you want original content that reflects your own experience and learning and wisdom, but without putting in the effort to write, I mean, there is a definite atrophy that will happen, right?
Unquestionable.
So here's a silly, but clear example. When I first arrived here at this parish almost 30 years ago, there were no iPhones yet. And I knew every single one of my parishioners, literally like 75% of my community. I knew their phone numbers by heart. The iPhone came, which is a great tool in many respects. It's also a monster, right? But I no longer put your phone number 724 I put Deacon Greg and the phone number. I don't know what your phone number is.
Yeah.
I know how to find Deacon Greg. But it was interesting. Look, not to be silly, I bought my children cell phones when they became of age. I don't know either of their phone numbers.
Yeah.
Because the day that I bought them, I entered their numbers as a contact, and now I just click Sophia, click Amelia. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I've noticed, in some sense, because that mental stretch and practice and repetition of recalling 7 or with area code 10 digits, I don't know if it's connected, but I don't have the same memory. Part of it may be age. I'll confess that. But dude,
if you're not using it, you're going to lose it. I mean, it's just how that works. And it's going to be harder and harder to do that. And it's going to show more and more in what you're putting out.
Yeah.
And, you know, like all of these graphic designers that are using AI to do everything now, right? Like you can throw something into Canva and it will create the whole flyer for you, or you could have ChatGPT. But I'm tired of seeing it. They all look the same. They all have the same color scheme. They all have the same fonts.
Yeah.
And the pictures that it's just, I feel like it's thinking that I'm dumb when other people are just using it over and over again.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's also making the people using it over and over again dumb. They lose their skill set. They lose their ability to keep going, to keep going. It was interesting. The Wall Street Journal talked about Pope Leo's recent talking about AI, and they described it as Pope Leo. This is their headline. Pope Leo compares AI threat to biblical Tower of Babel.
What did he mean? I mean, what was his thesis in that statement?
Well, that's the thesis statement of the Wall Street Journal article.
Okay.
Is how they're, but just the catchiness of that, to me, I know what I think when I hear that.
Right.
That it's somehow there to try to get us to a certain place, and it's just going to cause more and more confusion once we get to that place.
That Tower of Babel imagery is interesting because for those who have read Genesis 11 and see it, the 10 and 10, sorry, and see it, they will recognize that the idea is that the people are all wanting conformity, right? All one. Let us have one language.
Yep.
Right. And there's a reason biblically for that, which I don't think had anything to do with artificial intelligence, but the idea was an interesting connection. And the other part of it was, let's build a tower, a city with a tower up into the heavens. Let us become God.
Yep.
Which was the sin in chapter 3 of Genesis. That's fascinating. The other thing that you said something, and maybe we switched to this one, is you're getting bored with all the same color schemes and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that a concern is the loss of creativity.
Yeah.
Look, if AI can do things, like let's say this, we build technology to help automate things and take things away. I mean, we have wheels, right? I mean, imagine that we didn't have a wheel however many centuries ago, and our first ancestors created a wheel, and then they could build a cart. And how much more stuff could we haul in a cart than by just on our back? Okay, so technology, we continually advance. But freeing up those tasks allow for greater human, and the only thing that humans can do, discernment, creativity. So I have a friend, Stephen Kotler. He's a very, very well-known researcher of neuroscience, particularly on flow. He's written, I think now 16 books. God bless him. Anyways, he just published one. And he sent an email to the list as well. And I said to him, I love it. He says, listen to what he said. I'll read it for you. He's saying, that the question, when does AI take the jobs? He says, that's not the right question. His question is, when we have this capability, what do we do? What do we do with it?
Yeah.
When we have this technology and all of the speed that it can proffer. And he says, I loved his words, when intelligence scales, a single person can do what once required a team. That's great. The upside is enormous, but there's a catch. Abundance doesn't eliminate work. It eliminates low leverage work, right? So, okay, the wheel eliminated 4 trips of carrying rocks across the street to 1 trip. Okay. But then in every technological transition, the same pattern shows up. Tasks get automated, then workflows, then whole categories of effort disappear. What survives and expands is the human layer that machines don't supply. And I would edit his words to say cannot supply. And his list is this: creativity, judgment, taste, vision, ethics, direction, meaning in one word, discernment. So his Kotler's thesis is basically saying, like, you know, we're still going to have to work, and maybe even harder in creating, because that's the one thing that, not one, but it is a thing, and a very big thing, that is uniquely human versus the machines.
Without question. And in a world where everything looks the same,
Yeah.
standing out
Yeah.
makes you seen. So if you're trying to get your message out there, if you're trying to have something heard, if you're using the small example, creating flyers, and everything out there looks the same because it's that same chat GPT stuff.
Yeah.
But you create something that is actually created, that is actually unique, that is actually, people are going to see that and be attracted to it because it's going to look different.
Yeah.
Right? Conformity is not always the end goal.
Right.
And just because everyone else is telling you conform, I don't think we have to.
Yeah.
I mean, scripture tells you to not do that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. We should conform only to the will of God.
Right.
You know, I mean, and you can see now with that thought you just said where these Orwellian fears come from.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, I used it once at AI, and I forgot what I asked it, but I asked it a question just to see what it would come up with. And it came up with this answer. And I was like, whoa, that's awesome. It sounded so good. And then I stepped back. I'm like, but that's heresy according to our church. And I'm like, but what caught me was my immediate, it sucked me in.
Right.
And then I was able, thank God, to step back and say, wait a minute, no, that's not right. But if we do that, my point is that it can influence your thought.
Right.
Just like any words can influence your thought.
Right.
And, you know, are we on guard against that kind of stuff? And that's what they're all afraid of. You know, we're all going to become, you know, the Matrix and Orwell and 1984 and all that kind of stuff. So we've got to be, and that's the beauty of human beings, is you know, the creative faculty, the ability to discern things, you know, and that's why I think we are so fond of, as a species, of people with wisdom.
Yeah.
Because they've done it, they've lived it, they've fallen, they've gotten back up, and they've arrived. Or maybe they're still on their own journey or arrived at one destination to go to the other. But we look for wisdom. Well, maybe that's the whole point, is that we don't want to lose wisdom, the human wisdom that comes only from God and heeding his word. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, for whatever reason, when you just said that, I immediately went to Proverbs chapter 9, where wisdom builds her house and sets its table.
Yeah.
And there's the foolish woman that is out there calling you, telling you that the way is easy, come in that way.
Right.
And the more that you take that easy way, the more that you take that easy route, the more that you take that conformity, I think the more and more you lose wisdom and you fall into the foolishness that Scripture is warning you against time and again. Because as you said, Scripture is calling us not to conform except to the will of God. But as we hear in Romans 12, that is transformative.
Yeah.
That is a new way to see things and to actually get past.
Interesting. You know, it's making me think, you know, that in this age of AI, I think we should use it. I do. I just say I use it. I don't, like I say, I do not let it create nor write for me, but I'd let it do a lot of the automated tasks, and I do throw ideas at it to see what it comes back with, because sometimes it just sparks one of my own thoughts.
Yep.
So I do use it, but I think we have to be responsible with it, and it's that we have to maintain our humanity and recognize that this is a tool.
Right.
Something you said, Deacon Greg, made me think, you know, like the real goal is that we, you know, maintain our humanity. And we see that in the Garden of Eden, the first man, was a human and disobeyed God's commandment, and it led to death. And conversely, the Lord in his garden in Gethsemane submitted to the will of God and showed us what it actually means to be truly human.
Yeah.
And so maybe in that argument, that true humanity is one who obviously emulates Jesus Christ and not Adam and in the garden, but emulates the Lord. And that emulation was in submission to the will of God, because the will of God gives life and brings fullness to human beings, to all of us. And in Jesus's case, which is promised to us, that not only did he go to death, but he goes through death into the empty tomb, because of the fullness of his humanity.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just that
No,
was a
I
mental
mean,
dump.
you keep referring to AI as a tool.
Yeah,
And I think that that is the right approach to it. In the same sense that if I want to put a nail in the wall, I'm going to use a hammer. If I want to put a screw in the wall, I'm going to use a screwdriver. If I use a screwdriver to put a nail in the wall, it's not going to work. And if
Right.
I use a hammer to put a screw in, I'm going to have to call a drywall repair guy.
yeah,
Right? You got to use your tools that you have at your disposal, but use them in the appropriate way that they are intended.
Yeah.
So that you are able to have the proper outcome.
Yeah.
But what that means for us as humans is we have to exercise discernment, because the bigger and the more uncomfortable the tool might be, you have to use more and more discernment. I don't have to use the same discernment with my leaf blower that I have to use with my chainsaw.
right.
And so we just need to always keep that keep that in the forefront.
Yeah.
For example, I recently noticed cracks in cement, and I couldn't figure out why. And it hit me the other day. It's because I was chopping firewood on that cement, and it got stuck on the axe, and I picked the axe up with the entire piece of wood and slammed it down, and it clearly, because I'm Hercules, cracked a little bit of the cement paver that was,
Yeah.
there. I wasn't using the tool properly. It did not have the results that I wanted it to
Right.
do. It might have worked, but there were consequences to those actions, and those consequences
Yeah.
were not preferred.
Yeah. And maybe the best thing to keep in mind is if people choose to use AI as that tool, that we still have control over it.
Yes.
And I don't mean in the sense of the Matrix again. I mean, that's beyond my pay grade. That we'll have to, if we decide to trust the companies that, produce AI and governments that produce it, that we have to trust that they will have control. That's scary and maybe another component of itself.
Yeah.
But what I mean control is that we use it.
It doesn't use us.
Yeah, I was talking with Christian yesterday, our team member here, and we were talking about this very conversation, and he said something, and I hope I can clearly say it, but he said people are afraid that AI will take control of us and start to control our minds, take over our minds. And he responded with, really the fear is we cannot willingly relinquish our minds to the tool. So in other words, it's not that it's going to take over the world, it's that we're going to give it away. It's not that it's going to take over and, crush human beings. It's that we're going to voluntarily enslave ourselves to it.
Yep.
That's probably a deeper thought for me to wrestle with. Amazing. I wonder too, kind of in a silly, just different direction, but I am not creative in the sense of, artistic. I paid somebody to design our Warriors Faith logo. I kind of knew what I wanted, but I can't do that stuff. So we're working on a new project, which we will, talk about later, but we're calling it Project 78, referring to reclaiming the biblical family. And we're going to base it on Psalm 78. And as I was preparing and writing the outlines and so on, I'm like, give me a logo. So I'm not creative with that stuff. So created a logo. And it was nice. I don't know that we'll use that particular creation, but I bring that story up. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
Because might I have stretched my brain if I fought through designing a logo? Or worse, did I take away income from someone who is a professional graphic designer? You know what I mean? Because I did it on AI. I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting thought.
I think that is down another rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That is a huge one to go down, because to your point, the second point you made, as warrior saints striving to live a crucifixional life, we have to ask that second question. We have to ask about, is using this going to take income from someone else that has studied and knows how to do those things?
Yeah.
And does that matter? Because I can do it for free with this AI tool versus do I have a responsibility to do? I don't know. That's fun. That could be a fun conversation in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know the answer to it. I mean, it was just, an interesting thing. I always think human beings will adapt. So it's not like, AI is going to take over all these jobs and we're all just going to be homeless. Well, I mean, human beings will figure it out, right?
Yeah.
We might begin and create new careers and new needs, right? New niches that will help solve. But I believe in human beings. But anyway, it's an interesting conversation. And it's, there's another note we have here that made me think something interesting. When algorithms know our weaknesses better than we do, freedom itself is at risk. Where did you get that, Aaron? Oh, great. Saying. So for the camera, that's great. I don't know if you could hear that, but Aaron was doing, research and was talking about the Pope of Rome's Magnificat, whatever it was called, is his teaching on AI, and she saw all of the conversations that were out there, and she used AI and said, as an experiment, go summarize for me what is the reaction of all these people out there, and that line is what it came up with. When algorithms know our weaknesses better than we do, freedom itself is at risk. So, Deacon Greg, I think that's a great thing, because look, I'm going to expose another problem, which is partly connected to AI, but partly not. I don't know that we know thyself anymore, right?
No.
So I was reading a book called The Comfort Crisis by someone named Michael Easter, and it's an excellent book. I've referred to it before, but I'm rereading it, and as he said at one point that he has a chapter on boredom, and that nobody can be boredom anymore. And he's telling his story while he is on a 33-day hunting trip in the Alaskan landscape. And when they got up there, he was 101 miles from the closest town. So obviously no cell signal. And the plane that was taking them to where they would camp couldn't fit everyone. So he got stuck on the runway by himself while the pilot flew the other guy and then came back to get him. All right. And he goes through this whole thing about, like, he was horrified because he had no contact with human beings. But by the end of the chapter, he had turned the thought from loneliness, which he talks about, and we've talked about, the loneliness epidemic. In fact, the government has even, the health organizations have said Americans have a loneliness epidemic, into the idea of solitude. Not forever. Nobody can live by themselves like Thoreau forever and ever out there in the woods. But we never spend time in solitude, because we always have our phone. I just flew last weekend out of the country for a family event, and none of us, myself included, were ever not on our phones. I did read a little, so and I didn't read on my phone, but all right, I'm rambling to say this, based on that quote that Aaron found, or that AI created, if we don't know ourselves, because we're not spending time to know ourselves, then it is easy to see us giving away ourselves. I don't know. I rambled a lot trying to get there. I was working it out, but does that make any sense?
Makes perfect sense. If you don't know yourself and are spending all of your time on your phone, the algorithms are tracking that.
Yeah.
And in some sense, the algorithms then know you better than you know you.
Yeah.
And that's where that quote about it's playing to our weaknesses, knows our weaknesses better than we might, comes in.
Yeah.
Because they're going to show you things that are going to feed into the area that you are spending the most time.
Yeah.
And the things that you are spending the most time on are probably often not the things that we should be spending the most time on. And it is just going to keep pushing you further and further into that.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't know your own weakness, I mean, I work very hard at constantly exploring my own weaknesses.
Yeah.
Not just for self-emasculation, but I want to get better. I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. All right. And if I don't spend the time, like we were saying, in solitude, thinking quiet, without the phone, just, lost in the woods, whether literal or figuratively, then I'm not going to know my weaknesses. And if I don't know them, how am I going to fight them? And if I can't fight them, I will be exposed to the algorithms dumping that salacious temptation in front of me, so that now I have not only not done battle with my weaknesses, but I've embraced them and fostered them.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, we get shipments at my house all the time, and my wife glares at me, and I say, the algo got me. Right?
Yeah.
Because it knows the things that I am tempted to buy, and it puts them in front of me over and over again. And sometimes the algo gets me. You should see my new carry-on.
Nice.
I like it. But did I need it? That's always the question.
Yeah.
And that's never the easy question to answer, because the algo knew that I wanted it.
Yeah.
And the algo kept throwing it in front of me, especially when there was a Memorial Day sale.
Yeah. Well, for sure. But that leads into the idea and the conversation about consumption.
Right.
If we don't know our weaknesses to consume specific things, because, and then the AI or whatever, the algorithms are putting it in front of us, we have no control over that compulsion.
Well, and if we're completely compulsed to constantly consume, then it's always going to be right in front of our faces, because we always have the devices for consumption right at the ready.
Yep, absolutely. And that is a weakness that we are needing to recognize, but we can't if we don't, spend the time.
Remember phone holsters? Like you'd put them on your belt loop.
Oh yeah.
And you'd have your phone in a holster, like 6 shooters would in the Wild Wild West. Well, they had their gun at the holster because they needed it always at the ready for survival. We would put our phones on our hip, as though we needed it always at the ready for survival. That just hit me. I don't know why, but it's an image.
It's an expose on our humanity, which I guess then that leads, and maybe we can kind of wind down here, but what's 2028 going to look like, right? I mean, will we, be enslaved? And again, I don't mean in the sense of the movie, Matrix type of, what's that show, Westworld, on HBO, all that kind of stuff. Maybe, I hope not, dear God. But what's it going to look like? And will we be enslaved? Will we still have our humanity, And I mean, obviously I am not a sage or a prophet that I would, be able to see the future, but I think I could say this. And let's end on a good note here, because it's AI for me is a tool, and I won't let my tools decide my life.
Yeah.
It does not get to write. Look, here's how I look at it. I literally do not let it write for me, meaning sermons or texts or whatever, this Bible study, this podcast, whatever. But I'm certainly not going to let it write the script of my life.
Yeah.
I get to decide my life if I choose to do so. I mean, and my contention is we all better choose to do so, and that it better be referenced to the Word of God and not referenced to anything else out there.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, this was great. Like I said, I don't know that we have any questions, answered any questions, but we definitely raised some good questions that I think people need to think about. I'm still thinking about them and thinking through them. We're going to continue our AI discussion next time with, something that's really important to us is how do we deal with AI and our children as parents and in our families? I mean, they've got access to it too. I learned how to use ChatGPT the first time from my daughter, right? So, I mean, she was already there before I was. So how do we deal with that kind of stuff? How do we guide and teach? What do we permit? What is it doing to them? Whether good or bad. We're going to explore those things, especially because I hate that. Especially people say it, and I just did. Sorry. Especially when, we're going to begin a very strong focus in our work on family. And as we said, Project 78, meaning the project based on Psalm 78 is to restore and reclaim the biblical family. Family has been under assault, as we all know, in all its facets, right? We'll talk more about that as we get into Project 78. But one of the things that we need to be mindful of is if we're going to talk about restoring the biblical family, then you got to restore parenthood and its teaching. And that's what Psalm 78 starts with. Give ear, oh, my son, to my instruction, right? So actually, HaTorah, it says in Hebrew, to my law. So as parents, we've got to make sure that we teach our children responsibility in all of life, but that will also include AI. Long rant, simply to say, watch us again next time because we're going to talk about that stuff. You good with that if we go that direction?
We have to.
Yeah. All right. Great stuff. Love you, beautiful people. Glad you were with us. This was funner for us, I guess, maybe than for you. But if you stayed to the end, thank you. We're going to be back with Orthodox Liturgy as usual on Sunday. And until the next time. As always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.